Our next panel will discuss how conversations around art can foster cross-cultural connections through the lens of human rights. So I'm going to start with our moderator, who's going to join us now, Ambassador Michèle Taylor, the U.S. Permanent Representative to the United Nations Human Rights Council. Her Art and Embassies exhibition includes a painting of Eleanor Roosevelt by human rights singer Joan Baez, who also attended the events in Geneva and sang Blowing in the Wind to us. And I had the good fortune of being there, and it was just a fabulous event. And I had the good fortune of hanging around with Alexis and Kal Penn, so that was really a wonderful time. So anyway, I'm hoping he'll behave. Are you going to behave, Alexis?
I'm on my best behavior.
All right, Michèle, it's so great to see you again. So, Ambassador, I'm going to turn the floor over to you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Cynthia.
Okay.
It's wonderful to see you again.
Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you for coming to Geneva. Welcome, everyone, to our next panel. It was my incredible honor, as mentioned, to host the traveling exhibit in Geneva, simultaneous with the opening of our Art and Embassies exhibit, which is just such a powerful tool for democracy that you are hearing about and we'll hear more about today. A More Perfect Union is the exhibit that came to Geneva and is now playing here. So for those of you that just arrived, please make sure that you go and see the exhibit. Two of the artists on stage tonight, as you've already heard, were in Geneva for the exhibit opening there, Alexis and Kal. And unfortunately, Ambassador Chantale Wong couldn't be with us, but her piece of art, which you will learn a little bit more about in a few minutes, was a powerful, powerful presence in her stead. So I thought we would start with just a little video about our experience in Geneva to set the stage, and then we'll just move straight into a conversation.
Oh, really?
Can we have the audio? She had told us that she doesn't sing anymore, so that was quite a treat. As I said in the video, the collection speaks to the times that we live in, the challenges that we all face, and the ideals that we in the United States strive to uphold and that ambassadors strive to uphold around the world. It encourages us to delve into dialogues about equality, justice, freedom, human rights, the very principles of democracy that are the foundation of the United States and increasingly fragile around the world. So So really an important time to be having this conversation, and no better medium to strike that conversation than through art. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce our panelists one at a time and give them a chance to speak a little bit, and then we'll have a little bit more of a conversation. Alexis Rockman, as you saw, has a piece in the collection. He's a painter whose works for over 40 years have depicted themes in biodiversity and the climate crisis. Your works, I have to say, are quite provocative and, dare I say, a little bit disturbing at times, but also just beautifully captivating. And so I would love to hear from you a little bit more about the San Francisco piece, happens to be my hometown, why you chose that for the exhibit, and of course, as we're now finally talking about the environment as a human right, what it is that you hope that people will get from a human rights perspective from you.
Well, thank you so much, Ambassador Taylor. I just want to say that when I was a child, I was very aware of what humans had done to the environment and the landscape since they left Central Africa. And in the early 90s, I was talking to a paleontologist friend, and I asked him what he was afraid of, and he said, well, it's climate change, which I'd never heard of, and he explained to me the physics of it, and I thought, oh, that's going to be a challenge. Good thing it's thousands of years in the future, but that sounds like a great subject for me because I've been painting extinction and biodiversity crisis, as you mentioned, and plants and animals, stuff that I loved. Little did I know how fast this would accelerate, and the Golden Gate painting, which is in the show,
Can we get the Golden Gate painting up?
Yeah.
Should have been right after the video and the slides.
Looks pretty cropped, but it's close enough. Is part of a body of work that I call American Icons. The first one is now in the Smithsonian American Art Museum. If you want to go see it, it's up with the Thomas Moran. It has its own room. It's 24 feet wide. I started that in 1999 because I thought if I make paintings of what these issues are going to do to things that we care about, landmarks in America, then of course I can turn things around and make the world right. And I was sadly mistaken, but I've continued in that body of work, taking places that I love, like San Francisco, not only showing what will happen to it when the ice caps melt, but also other issues like invasive species, plants and animals that come from other parts of the world and make a home in these human-disrupted environments.
Thank you. Did you want to tell us a little bit about your other piece, too?
Remind me what it is. No, that's not it.
That's my other piece, but
Pass the bong.
This is from a whole collection, right?
Exactly. So you're going to need a bong after you hear this talk. This is a part of a body of work that I've been working on since my wife Dorothy is in the audience, and I went to Antarctica in 2008. And as we were looking at glaciers, which are glaciers and icebergs, which are basically ice sheets that have come off and broken off and are floating around in the water until they end up, out to sea. I thought, wow, these are almost like portraits of future extinctions, and I wanted to make paintings almost like family portraits of these pieces of ice that won't be around that much longer. There's a lot of humor going on around here too.
This one is.
That must be another act, another theater.
Thank you. So up next we have Kal Penn, who probably many of you know as a comedian, but he is not just a comedian. He's been a White House aide, a writer, and a documentarian. He uses his artistic ability, empathy, humor, and charisma to drive change and also to change minds. I really love that you have married these worlds of comedy and theater and acting with activism and government. Something very loose and not at all rigid with something that is like a giant monolith that nobody can move. And so would love to hear from you a little bit about how you marry the artistic world with the government world.
sure. Thank you, Ambassador Taylor. And I know that's the real public service photo, but I love that the first one that we were allowed to put up is from a very R-rated comedy called Harold and Kumar Escape from Guantanamo Bay. To your point, Alexis, it's a stoner comedy. And the gentleman in the middle is a comedian named James Adomian, who was playing President Bush. And the three of us smoke a joint together in the film. So just the idea that we live in a country free enough to put up that photo in a State Department and Smithsonian-sponsored event on public diplomacy, I think really, I mean, jokes aside, it underscores something that's possible in the United States that's not possible in very many countries. And so, yes, that was a film that was a lot of fun. It had no political lean one way or the other. And that's something that I've really enjoyed about my private sector career. In fact, this movie came out, I think, in 2008. You know, we went to pretty great lengths to make sure, you know, it is a road trip stoner comedy, but it's, you know, the subtext is about Guantanamo Bay. We went to pretty great lengths, and the writers did as well, to make sure that while it was a satire, it shouldn't have any political slant that could isolate an audience. And I think that was a choice that was made because of the type of franchise that it is. But there's always a part of you that kind of wonders whether you've done a good job at that or not. And I remember coming to DC, I think it was for a correspondence dinner actually, and met somebody who was pretty high up in the Bush administration and said, "Hey, aren't you that guy from that Guantanamo Bay movie?" And I was like, "Oh man, how is this gonna go?" And he said, "You know, a lot of us have seen it. It's hilarious." And I was like, "Oh, all right." And then his response then was, "Were we not supposed to find it hilarious?" And I said, "No, you were. You've actually." I'm just sort of perplexed because our whole goal was to make everybody laugh regardless of their political affiliation, right? We don't want you to feel like this movie is not for you, despite the subject matter or the subtext. And so to answer your question, one of the things that I've really loved about career in comedy is always subjective, but it has the potential to bring people together, especially when you're able to tell stories that in other worlds might just sort of be a little bit fearful to tell.
I have to both agree with you that it is an amazing thing that we live in a country where we can be free to say and show all kinds of things. But also, and you know, maybe your comedy had something to do with this, but we also live at a time where we have a country that is willing to open up to scrutiny from human rights mechanisms. And I don't know how many of you know this, but I was able to sign a letter and invite the Special Rapporteur on countering terrorism while preserving human rights to visit Guantanamo Bay and the detainees that are still there. What an extraordinary thing that the United States is open to that kind of scrutiny. So thank you for your part in that.
Oh my gosh, thank you.
The comedy leads to action sometimes. Fantastic. So our next panelist is Ambassador Chantale Wong. She is the director of the Asian Development Bank and has been on a whirlwind tour for the last couple of weeks to several countries and cities, so we're grateful to have her here. She's a photographic artist, and the richness of her work really focuses not on the moments that it captures, but rather its ability to bridge cultural divides and promote social change. She also bridges the worlds between government and art. And her iconic photo, which maybe we can move to that photo now, of John Lewis, my former congressman and a dear friend who is missed very much, really is a powerful piece at the entrance of the exhibit here. So would love to hear a little bit from you. The story of how this portrait came to be is really fascinating, and then how it has led to this other project that you're working on. I think we have an example of that.
Thank you, Ambassador Taylor. Actually, I'm purely an accidental artist because I've spent my career here in Washington working in the halls of policy, mostly in the back rooms, the Office of Management and Budget and Interior, and so I was a policy wonk, basically. And I retired in 2014 and decided to pick up a camera, and of course, accidentally met the person who was organizing these pilgrimages that Congressman Lewis goes on, and he invites members of Congress to go on these pilgrimages, and he did it for about 20 years, just to make sure that we don't forget what walking across Selma, the Edmund Pettus Bridge, meant. So I was very lucky to go along after I retired, picked up a camera, and that was the only way I think I was able to do something like this. And so I went with him every year for the last 4 years of his life. And we would visit civil rights sites across Alabama. We also went to Memphis, Tennessee, on the 50th anniversary of the assassination of Martin Luther King, bringing members as well. And then my role was to interview them during these trips, interview members of Congress to have them reflect on what they saw, how they, what that meant to them, and to bring back to their work here in Washington. So that was kind of my goal. And this particular photo was our first time. The National Memorial for Peace and Justice. We call it the Lynching Memorial in Montgomery, Alabama. It opened in 2018, so it was our first time to go and visit that exhibit with the delegation. And as you enter the memorial, there were these slave statues. I think it's by a Ghanaian artist. That's right at the very beginning of the walk. And there's a pathway, and you go up the hill to the main structure, which is there are columns that look like lynching, and they're names of people that they can discover. They're on these columns. So there's this big structure on the very top, and I had already gone with the delegation up to the very top of the berm, and when I looked down and I saw Congressman Lewis just standing there reflecting, and I said, oh my God, that is the moment. So I ran down the hill and took this one shot, and it really reflected on what he thought about his people, what it meant from slavery to modern day slavery, the mass incarceration of African Americans. All that is really reflected on his face. So that's how this shot happened. I was very, very lucky to do that. You know, I'm not I have now become a professional photographer, but I have to put it aside. The photography, my work is getting in the way of my photography at the moment. I came back to public service to be the U.S. Executive Director at the Asian Development Bank. But I am hoping to. I was actually in the process of doing a project in Selma. I think the next photo is probably one of the ones that I took. This is a photo that is in a little cafe between Selma and Montgomery, and it's usually you can sort of still see the challenges between blacks and whites in this little diner. The blacks are the servers, and they don't sit together. The white customers come in and they sit in a little corner. And this is really still what Selma is. So what I wanted to do was really to take photos of Alabama, going into homes of people in Alabama and see answer the question of what civil rights looked like 55 years after John Lewis had marched across the bridge. And the answer is not that much different.
Goodness, that sounds like some of the pessimism we heard from Alexis. I would be remiss if we're going to talk about that in a minute.
Don't you read the paper?
No, I live human rights every day. Are you kidding? I would be remiss if I didn't pay a brief homage to Joan Baez's piece, which we could pull that up, I think is the next slide, that you all have heard so much about. She has become a painter, and we found this amazing painting of Eleanor Roosevelt that is part of the Art and Embassies collection in Geneva and was shown with the traveling exhibit. And it's
That's still mine.
Oh, okay. Maybe one more. Anyway, maybe we'll get.
I could talk a little bit about this photo. Actually, this is the family of Ralph Abernathy, Martin Luther King's best buddy. This is his family still in Alabama that I took a photo of.
So now two of you have talked about your pessimism, but Alexis, for you especially, I would argue that the fact that you are still painting on these themes means that you believe in the power of art in some capacity to make a difference. So I want to challenge you a little bit, even though, like you said, I read the news, I know what's happening out there, but why do you still paint then? Tell us about it.
It's hard to get out of bed, but I want to give my wife, Dorothy, credit who's in the second row, for encouraging me to get out of bed and remind me of how lucky we are and how much there is to love and to be an artist. I love painting, and there's a whole nother lecture I could do about painting in those paintings that isn't that interesting for this context. So I am very much still alive and kicking, and I ain't going out like that.
And I think, at least for me, when I look at your painting of the Golden Gate Bridge, which is where I'm from, I know what it's supposed to look like, and it's not that. And how could I look at that piece and not think, what the hell do I need to do to make sure that doesn't happen?
I agree completely.
Thanks.
Help.
Kal, I want to ask you, are there subjects that it's not okay to joke about? You talked about the ability to say things or show things that aren't PC, but are there things where it crosses the line, or is it important to have humor, be able to address everything?
I think probably both, right? There's and this is such an interesting time for comedy with regard to sort of what you're saying. And I think a lot of folks misinterpret what's happening in the comedy space. My view is there's never been a better time to write comedy. Well, once the writer's strike is over. then it will not. Then it will be the best time to write comedy. But
You're not writing, are you?
I'm not writing right now. I'm on double strike. Pay your talent fairly. But the idea that folks are maybe confused about what you could or couldn't say. There's a big comedy director who's gone on to do action films, and he's done a few interviews. One, the more notable one, I think a few years ago in the New York Times, where he said something like, I don't do comedy anymore because you can't make the jokes that you used to be able to make.
Who's that?
I'll tell you about that. I mean, it's easy to it's all a public thing anyway, but I don't, I think to focus on one person is missing the point, which is why I usually don't like to...
Albert Brooks?
To name names, no. But the point of that was, I couldn't, reading somebody say, well, you can't make jokes you used to be able to make. You can't say words you used to be able to say. I mean, my first thought is, go ahead, say it. Say the word that you think you can't say anymore. Go ahead, say it. Say it, tweet it. You're not going to do that, are you? Not because you don't think you can, but because you understand that the free market will take care of your usage of that word or something like that, right? And I think people get confused by this. It's not that you can still say whatever you want. And as an artist, I would defend the idea of your ability to say whatever you want. But I think we sometimes confuse that. The second thing that really jarred me from reading this interview was, as somebody who's made pretty R-rated stoner comedies, the last thing I want to do is make a joke in 2023 that I made in 2006. Why would I want to make that joke again? The growth of comedy means that I have to meet my audience where the audience is. And I think that's a wonderful opportunity, knowing that audiences' tastes and palates have changed, that comedy remains subjective but can remain unifying. It's a wonderful challenge for somebody who's a writer or who works in the comedy space. So yes, I think that there are things that as a decent human, you maybe don't want to say, or you maybe don't want to feature. And I think some of those folks are just caught up in a really archaic worldview that, thanks to a younger generation, thanks to technology that's changed, we're leaps and bounds more forward than we used to be. So I wish that was sort of the nature of the conversation.
It sounds like there's also a little bit of a theme here, though, of the things that we're talking about now are still the same things we were talking about
Definitely.
a long time ago. And unfortunately, the need to continue to have forced conversations about human rights that thankfully all of your art provokes us to do is still really important. Chantale, I would just love to know from you, if you were able to be out with your camera right now, what is the one thing in the world that you would want to capture in a way that people would be forced to confront it?
Well, I think climate change, where Alexis is, the kind of work that I'm doing now is I'm in the region, Asia Pacific, where climate change is actually right there. It affects people, poverty, it increases poverty, food security, all of that. And what we're doing is talking about it and, doing a lot of meetings and pieces of paper. But I think the power of the art and the visuals about what those particular challenges are, I would love to figure out how to do that. And I am doing a lot of traveling in my job in the region. So, the Pacific Islands, for example, there are many islands are 6 feet above sea level at the moment. And even at 1.5 degrees Celsius, they're not going to be in existence in 30 years.
Maldives will literally disappear.
Yes, many of these.
Alexis's vision.
Many of these countries. So those images I still try to do early in the morning. Like if I have meetings at 9 o'clock, I'll go out 6 o'clock in the morning to go take some photos of the people and it goes throughout. So our region covers from the Caucasus, Georgia, Armenia, all the way through Asia, South Asia, Southeast Asia, and all of these countries are in dire straits, floods, extreme weather. So to capture the stories of these people that are highly challenged, I think that's what I would have loved to do.
Well, unfortunately, we are out of time. I think I would just leave with the environment is the existential crisis of our lives. As you saw in the video, we were all sweating profusely in Geneva, which is not a normal thing. So thank you all for being incredibly provocative and making us think about what we do every day that can make a difference in the future and right now. So thank you so much.
Thank you.